Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor. I'm recording this actually on June 20th of 2022, which is our first official national celebration Monday off for Juneteenth. The Juneteenth celebration for the ending of slavery. I should say the ending of institutionalized, overt slavery. That shows you my bias, but that's how I look at it. And if you haven't heard by now the history behind it, I invite you and encourage you to do so. NPR has been running some nice spots on it, having to do with the delayed implementation of President Lincoln's Emancipation Proclamation from January 1st of 1863 to June 19th of 1865, when the word finally reached the rest of Louisiana and Texas. Somehow they just didn't get the word 2.5 years earlier, but it was delivered by the U.S. Army and actually by a group of troops commanded by, I think it was a Major Granger, who came from Sodus, New York, which is not far from Rochester. So a little local connection there to Juneteenth. And as I talked about in worship yesterday a little bit, I think sometimes people who look like me wonder, why should we celebrate that? It just makes everybody feel bad. I wasn't a part of slavery. I never owned slaves. I'm not in favor of it, yada, yada, yada. And for me, it comes back to the fact that we are all one in the sight of God, and when one hurts, we all hurt. And when one celebrates, we should all celebrate. I don't happen to have a strong Irish identity, and yet St. Patrick's Day, I'm likely to wear green or orange to honor the day. The same is true for Black History Month, where I try to honor my children who are African American. I think if we're going to be living in a pluralistic society, we need to kind of honor each other, don't you? And I would want people to honor what's important to me. Christmas, Easter. I don't know that I claim a lot of other things other than that. My personal heritage is a map of the British Isles, and I enjoy doing the genealogical stuff. I'm descended from Charlemagne, 8 of the 32 signers of the Magna Carta, that kind of stuff. But I think it's really important, especially for a dominant culture, which at least for another decade or two, we are as Euro-Americans. We won't be, which I think is what's scaring the bejesus out of many, many people. But why? Why be scared? I was reminded of the story in the Bible, and I preached on it yesterday, so go back and listen if you haven't heard it already. But it's the story where it's often called the Gerasene demoniac, and this man is possessed of spirits, probably mental illness nowadays, but possessed of demons, and Jesus comes along, ends up sending the demons into the pigs, the herd of pigs that's nearby, and they go running off the edge of a cliff, and they all drown in the water, in the ocean, the lake, and the Sea of Galilee. And the man is cured, and then the people are afraid of him, and the people are afraid of Jesus. And if you read that section in Luke, you find that they ask him to leave. They ask Jesus to leave. And Jesus asks the man to stay, to bear witness to God's healing. I think that many of us get scared of the unknown, or we know how to relate to a group of people, we think, and then we find out that we haven't been relating correctly, or they've changed, or we've gotten healthier, or they've gotten healthier. And some people's immediate reaction is to try to cordon them off, push them away, and chain them up, and make them the problem. We see it with populations around the country and around the world. And I think it's really up to us to try to change that. If we are believers and followers of Jesus, then we are supposed to be trying to inaugurate and invite in the KOG where everyone matters and everyone is important. And what better way to do that than to honor them, the people who are different than we, with their customs, not to co-opt them, not to absorb them or bastardize them in some way, but to honor them as they are, and to honor them for the group that they represent. So, what are you doing today to celebrate and honor Juneteenth? And for me, it's prayer and mindfulness and recommitment that I will not allow that to happen again. If I have to lay down my life to make sure that doesn't happen again, I will not allow that to happen again. And it's very personal with me, obviously, because my children are all men and women of color. But we talk about that in this family. Since the kids were in middle school, they would ask me, Mom, do you think there's going to be another civil war? Would we ever be seen as enemies? I said, well, we wouldn't, but others might see us that way. And, those are serious conversations to have. And many of you have transracial families, whether they're biracial or triracial, they're transracial. And I'm sure that the thought crosses your mind too. Oh, what's going to happen? So today is a day to honor freedom in all of its forms, even when it makes us uncomfortable, maybe especially when it makes us uncomfortable. Freedom of speech, certainly freedom to worship, but freedom of expression, freedom of values. As long as my values aren't hurting yours aren't hurting mine, have at it. Believe whatever you want, do whatever you want. As soon as somebody's values impinge on the other person's, then it's a problem. And that's where we have to have societal constraints. I think that's why we can't yell fire in a crowded theater. I also believe that's why we need to have some care around gun sales, and why we needed to have some mask mandates for the good of the many. The needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, to quote Mr. Spock. So that's my wish for you today, to be thinking about how to honor those who are different from you, and especially on this day, to honor freedom and celebrate that, figure out how you can support it, and to be mindful of the celebration of our brothers and sisters of color. Thanks for joining me for this prayerful pause with the pastor, and I'm Pastor Deb Swift of South Presbyterian Church in Rochester, New York. And until next time, take care. God bless. Bye for now.